This show is a part of the podcast network of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society, an international community of philosophers and seekers dedicated to the pursuit of truth, wisdom, virtue, and the divine, wherever they may be found. To find out more, go to thewalledgarden.com. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing verses 5 to 6, at least a portion of those verses from Seneca's 6th letter on sharing knowledge. And these verses really give a very important lesson for anybody who's engaging in philosophy. And there's a few ways that I'd like to take this idea that Seneca shares. So I'm going to dive in and read the quote, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion. So he says, quote, "The living voice and the intimacy of a common life will help you more than the written word. You must go to the scene of the action first, because men put more faith in their eyes than in their ears, and second, because the way is long if one follows precepts, but short and helpful if one follows patterns. Cleanthes could not have been the express image of Zeno if he had merely heard his lectures. He shared in his life, saw into his hidden purposes, and watched him to see whether he lived according to his own rules. Plato, Aristotle, and the whole throng of sages who were destined to go each his different way, derived more benefit from the character than from the words of Socrates. It was not the classroom of Epicurus, but living together under the same roof, that made great men of Metrodorus, Hermachus, and Polyanus. Therefore I summon you, not merely that you may derive benefit, but that you may confer benefit, for we can assist each other greatly." End quote. So there's a couple of great ideas that I think we would all do well to learn from a passage like this. And then there's a direction that I'd like to take it that is sort of different, but along the same vein of what Seneca is saying. But there's one line that's really important in this passage, and it's when he says that the way is long if one follows precepts, but short and helpful if one follows patterns. And this is really useful information to know, because what he's trying to say here is, look, you can just set a whole bunch of rules and try to follow them, or you can actually watch what is helpful for other people. You can watch how they live their lives and see what actually works and what doesn't work. And I think that is a really great way to say that actions are far more important than words. The things that people do will teach you far more than what they say. And that idea fits very nicely with what he goes on to say about these great philosophers who learned from these also great philosophers. The idea is that these people couldn't have become great as they were if they didn't spend the time watching their superiors, watching those people who they wanted to emulate, and seeing how they lived their life. What was their character like when nobody was watching? What was their character like, and what were their hidden motivations when they weren't lecturing up on a stage? And I think that that's a great thing to cultivate in your life, this sense that by watching the people around you, you will learn what works for them and what doesn't, and you'll learn the truth of what works for them and what doesn't, as opposed to just the words that they're speaking. And I think that that's such a great idea. Great people aren't made through speaking or through being taught a bunch of rules. Great people are made by imitation of the great characteristics that we see in other people, the examples that are given to us in other people. And you can think about this in your own life. I mean, do you feel like you have been influenced more by excellent examples of people in your life, or do you feel like you've been influenced more by people telling you different rules that you should live by, or different principles that you should live by? It's definitely not clear that humans are very good at taking wisdom in, and kind of contrary to the previous episode where we're discussing an earlier verse in this letter where we're discussing this idea that we should share and receive good ideas, but wisdom also says that people aren't very good at that. But we are very good at imitation. We're very good at conceptualizing the ideal person and finding fragments of that person in the people around us and seeing that's what I'd like to be like because they're living their life in this way and I can see that it's working for them. And I can certainly see that in my life, when it comes to the expansion of my mind, of my consciousness, to the growth of the way that I see the world, and taking in more information and wiser information, I think that I've learned definitely so much from books and from lectures and from hearing great teachers. However, when it comes to practical daily wisdom, I know that I've taken a lot from the great examples of people in my life who have shown me what to do and what not to do. I think that Jim Rohn had a really good point when he said that you're either an example or a warning, right? And everybody is either an example or a warning. Should I live my life like that? Is that an example to me, or is that a warning of what I should not do? And you will see that in the people around you. And I think that there's another way that I want to take this as well, because an idea that I've been thinking about lately is just how often the Stoics say, put down the books for a moment. Spend some time watching other people, watching your own life. I think that that's wisdom right there. This idea that really philosophy is not just about study. It's not just about reading from a book or listening to a lecture. It's not. It's about a practice in your life of observing the world around you, observing what happens around you, and seeing what you can learn about how to live a better life and to move forward. And I think that we don't often give ourselves enough credit for the fact that we can learn so much by watching ourselves as if we don't even know ourselves, which, that's kind of the fact. We don't know ourselves. Philosophy helps us to get to know who we really are. But the process that you engage in to do that is by watching yourself carefully. How do you act when there's nobody around? How do you act in terms of your hidden motivations? What are the things that you do that make you feel stronger and more capable? And what are the things that you do that make you feel weaker and less capable to take on the trials and the paths of life? What's working for you? What isn't? You can really learn that just by watching yourself as you implement principles in your life. And that is philosophy. If you pay attention to what's working and to what's not, that is philosophy. It is learning the wisdom of everyday life. So I'd encourage you to pay attention to that. And something else that I heard recently from Matthew McConaughey, which I thought was interesting. And at the time of recording this, obviously Matthew is on a crazy tour. He's on every podcast. He's like the glitter of media at the moment. He's absolutely everywhere. But one of the really good ideas that I kind of took away from him was he said that he kept a journal throughout his entire life, especially when times were going very well for him. And what he would do when times weren't going well for him was he would look back at his journals of when things were going quite well, and he'd say, what was I doing in those times? What were the things that I was doing that were actually helping me to live a better life and to feel better and to move forward with strength and purpose? And he would just start doing them again. That's philosophy. That's the process of learning from your life the wisdom that exists in the, as Seneca says, the intimacy of a common life. And so I'd really encourage you to take away from this, not necessarily that you have to stick around with another philosopher for 10 years and watch how they live, but also how can you watch yourself and learn from yourself and see what it is that is going to be helpful for you and what is clearly not working. Because that's going to be a very quick way to see very clearly where you should go next. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope it's been helpful to you and you've taken a few things away. And as always, these episodes are only as good as you're able to use them and implement them into your life in practical ways. So please take something away from this, meditate on it, and see how you can use it today. Anyway, I'll talk to you next time.